The South African men's senior coach, Hugo Broos, is in the headlines once again. And the reason for that, simple. We're preparing for the World Cup in Mexico, USA, and Canada in a few months, and he's named his squad to play against Panama. And with that, there have been some jaw-dropping selections or maybe omissions from the squad. When you look at the goalkeeping department, of course, Sipho Chaine dropped from the squad. Shocker. When you look at the attacking department, the likes of Masco and Bulle dropped from the squad. Big shockers. And, well, those are the big talking points in this regard. Rayners is another that's been dropped from the squad. And, well, Hugo Broos adamant in his stance on why he's made the choices he's made. He breaks that down. We get into that a little bit later. We'll also be looking into his overseas-based players. He's made a lot of noise in years gone by about South African players that need to play in European clubs and need to be active as well. So we look at the European-based players. We look at some of the competition for places with the likes of Chaine and Bulle, Masco, as well as Rayners, why they're not in the squad. Look at the numbers of those that are in the squad, and also what Hugo Broos has said in defining why some haven't made the squad and why others have. So on that note, it's what it is to all lovers of the beautifully South African game we've all come to affectionately know as Tiski. I am Sizwe Mabena. Welcome to the Sizwe Mabena Show on Omni Audio Africa. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. And let's get straight into it then. When you look at the squad that's been named, well, we've got your goalkeepers, defenders, midfielders, and forwards, and the likes of Williams in the squad. No surprise there. Goss in the squad. No surprise there. The big surprise there from a goalkeeping point of view is Lena. We'll touch on him a little bit later on in the show. Let's start off with the defenders that Hugo Broos has selected and go to a man who started off his career here in South Africa with SuperSport United, that being Ime Ocon. A little bit earlier, I said Ime Ocon, and Tu, who's a part of the team that is behind the scenes, was like, yeah, sounds Nigerian, and yes. I don't know why this is a talking point, but let's just put it to rest quickly from my point of view. Ime Ocon, born in South Africa, to a South African mother, a Nigerian father, very much South African, lived his whole life in South Africa, right here in Johannesburg, and currently, after some time out at SuperSport United and his football upbringing at SuperSport United, he's out in the second division in Germany with Hannover 96. Now, in this current season out in Bundesliga 2, in the 25-26 campaign, he's had 17 matches. He's started 15 of the 17, so he's come off the bench twice. He's also scored a couple of goals, amassing 1,257 minutes. And that's interesting when you look at those numbers and also consider the fact that in his first season out that side, he's getting game time, a lot of it. And we are happy for him. And keep in mind, the standard in Germany of Bundesliga 2 is considered to be extremely high. So for him to be playing as much as he's playing, seeing as much game time as he is, including the fact that he has scored a couple of goals, means we understand his selection and the criteria to which Hugo Broos was looking at him from, or considering that. Now, let's move on to another player that's a big talking point, and that, of course, is Samuel Ogabini. He plays out in Mold, and of course, with him, the season just started. In as far as 2026, they've played just the one game so far this season, and you can see in the numbers, just the one game. But it's interesting when you look back at 2025, 22 appearances, 1 goal, 3 assists. Also, you'll see on the far right, the match rating for him. His rating is at 7.3. For the year 2025, which is quite impressive out at Mold. And in 2026, in his one appearance so far, his match rating is at 8.0. So that's another defender out in Europe. Not only is he getting game time, but he's playing at a very high level and also very impressive and regular. Now, the big talking point was with regards to a talent at Orlando Pirates not too long ago. That, of course, was Bogazi, and how quickly he moved from the junior ranks to the senior team at Pirates, and from the senior team to the national team, and once getting into the national team, solidified himself as a permanent member, almost one could argue, of the starting 11. Still just 20 years of age. We're looking at these numbers out in the US, of course, with Chicago Fire. The season is just 4 games old in the Major League Soccer 2026 season. So 4 games played for Bogazi. He's played every game so far. What I do find interesting And something I would like you to consider, especially when you look at other numbers, when you go forward to other players, aerial duels won. It's just 12% from Bogazi. If there is a weakness to the Bogazi game, dare I suggest it would be in the air, especially when you consider World Cup teams and teams from different parts of the world. That's one area where he could very well be exposed. If he is to be exposed, he is a very good player. And I'm only highlighting that in looking for maybe a slight chink in his armor. And that may very well be it. Now, if you keep looking at the games that he's played so far this season, 4 games out in the US. He started off against Houston in the 2-1 loss. You'll see the rating on the far right, at the bottom right, I should say, of your corner, 5.9. So he started off on a losing note in the league out in the US, and that wasn't his most impressive game. In fact, he played 88 minutes in his first game, so he was substituted late towards the end of the game. But look at the improvement since then. Against Montreal, where they won 3-0. He played all 90 minutes, rating of 7.7. Against Columbus, where they played 0-0. Keep in mind, Columbus, a side Dr. Kumalo once played for out in the US, a rating of 7.5 from Bogazi against Columbus. Played all 90 minutes there. And also against DC United, he played all 90 minutes again. Another impressive rating of 7.5. So from Bogazi, after maybe a testing start to the league, the impressive thing is he's a starter in every game already, which suggests things are moving in the right direction. When you look at his ratings, his match ratings, he is also impressing in that regard. And again, no question marks as to why Hugo Broos has included him in the squad. And in as far as the defenders are concerned that are playing their football overseas, all of them busy, all of them booked, and all of them impressing in ensuring that they continue to keep their places in the Bafana Bafana setup, and not just that, in ensuring that they stand a chance of going to the World Cup. Now, let's look at the midfielders, and we'll start off with Sithole from a midfielding point of view. Out of the midfielders, of course, he's competing with the likes of Mugwena, Adams, and Bata for a starting berth. The only of the midfielders, the deep-lying midfielders, that plays his club football abroad is Sithole. And he's got interesting numbers. Stands big at 186, 20 matches played in Liga Portugal for the 25-26 season. Just a 1 goal scored, aerial duels won. This is interesting. 76% of his aerial duels won. That will be, I think, a huge factor in whether he does play, does start, doesn't start when it comes to the World Cup. Should he be included in the World Cup squad because of what he can do in maybe assisting the likes of Bogazi defensively, especially in winning aerial duels. So that's our look at Sithole. But then, when you look at his season in totality, in moving to his second page, you'll see that for Tondela out in Portugal, he's got 20 appearances in the league, 22 appearances in all competitions. He's played 2 cup games. In those 2 cup games, he scored a goal. He's also scored 1 goal in the league. So all in all, this season, he's played 22 games and scored a couple of goals in all competitions at a rating of 6.4. Of the midfielders, once again, he's the only that plays club football out in Europe. So we'll keep things moving along and go to an interesting part. The forwards, from a South African point of view, are an interesting talking point. Now, Lyle Foster will be the first to pop up from the forwards here. He, of course, competing really for the number 9 position with one other player. That's Evidence Makgopa. But we'll talk about Makgopa a little bit later on when we look at him and compare him to a player that didn't, of course, make the squad in Ikram Rayners. Now, Lyle Foster stands at about 8'5". Lovely presence he does have in the field. 22 matches, and I think this is the thing that stands out more than anything about Lyle Foster. And this is what earns him his berth in the squad, and also in the starting lineup for Bafana Bafana. Plays in the Premier League out in England, which pretty much means he's playing in one of the top 5 leagues in the world of football. That's the most important thing to consider when you look at Lyle Foster. He's getting game time, a lot of it, in one of the best leagues in the world. Some will argue it's the best league in the world, or the most competitive league in the world, which is out in England. 22 matches, 3 goals, 1 assist, at a rating of 6.28, but aerial duels won, 38%. Again, in the air, He wins more, or is winning more than Bogazi right now in the early stages of his career out in the USA. And when you keep moving it along with Lyle Foster, and you look at his stats a little bit further, including where he scores his goals from, when you look at the graphic that's coming up now, you'll see all of his goals are scored inside the box. All of his shots, for the most part, are inside the box. He does have a handful of shots from outside of the box that aren't necessarily on target, but 3 goals, 1 assist, 22 matches, 14 starts. Now that's important. 14 starts of his 22 appearances so far out in England. Again, he's amassed 1,229 minutes of playing time in England. Again, that is a huge part, I do believe, why Lyle Foster is in the squad. It's where he plays his football and the amount of time he's getting out in England. And when you look out throughout his career, wherever he's played, Lyle Foster, he's always had game time. And that's also, I think, something that stood him in good stead in as far as his international career. Now, here's a big surprise for me. And here's a player I'm looking forward to, the man we're moving to next, in seeing play for Bafana Bafana. And sometimes when I look at his numbers, I wonder, why wasn't he selected a little bit earlier? He plays his club football out in the US, and that may be a bit of a factor in why Hugo Broos may not have selected him thus far, up until now, or maybe considered him for the national team. But Hlongwane has some rather impressive numbers out in the States. We'll get into those in a moment. Again, he stands at 182 already. That's a good, lovely presence for a forward 25 years of age. So far, four games played in this current campaign. Out in the US, so he's played in all 4 games. That's important to note. Aerial duels 1. I only say this to compare this to Bogazi. 12% from Bogazi. For Hlongwane, 35% of his aerial duels have been won so far this season. But when you move it on, and we look at the next page, which of course looks at seasons gone by for Hlongwane, which is important because it makes the point that, or backs up the point that I was making earlier, which I feel maybe he could have been considered a little bit earlier for a Bafana Bafana starting place. When you look at 2026, yep, there's the 4 games played, no goals as yet, no assists. In 2025 at Minnesota, he's had 44 appearances. That's impressive. 5 goals scored, a couple of assists. In 2024, even better, 37 appearances, 11 goals, and 4 assists. In 2023, this guy scored 17 goals for Minnesota in 38 appearances with 5 assists. Dare I say, he's a man that should have been considered for Bafana Bafana much earlier. I'm hoping he'll be good enough to impress, not only for Hugo Broos, but for all of us as South Africans, and could very well add value to the national team going into the World Cup, should he impressed with his attitude, which is important with Hugo Broos, including his commitment to training and how he performs on the field. Now, Masco is the last of the overseas-based players. Of course, he only moved just recently, but already out in Cyprus, 7 matches, 1 goal. He's busy, he's booked, he's playing a lot of football, and it makes sense in that Hugo Broos is staying consistent with his overseas-based players, that he's not choosing him for just playing overseas. You have to actually have some games under your belt and be booked and busy in the way of getting a starting berth and produce numbers that are impressive. And for the 22-year-olds here, that is Otapela Masco, playing mostly at left wing in his time out in Cyprus. I think those numbers are enough to get him in the squad. Whether he'll make the squad going forward, we'll have to wait and see, but he's making a case for himself, and he'll also need to continue in that regard in his time in camp and whatever performances he will get with Hugo Broos. Now, that's our look at the overseas-based players. And the one thing we can all be sure of is, well, he's consistent, Hugo Broos. They're all playing football overseas. They all seem to have impressive numbers. And some, maybe you could argue, maybe with the Lyle Foster case, so much game time, so few goals in return, but I don't think he just looks at goals when he considers Lyle Foster. Maybe he looks at his hold-up play, his ability in the air, his strength, his ability to keep defenders busy, because he pretty much brings the same traits as Mahopa does in his selection for the number 9 position. I don't think that's where the answer for goals and goals alone will come from a Hugo Broos point of view. Now, in keeping things moving along, the big discussion has been in the number 10 position. Going into the AFCON, we're all talking number 10. Who would play number 10 in the absence, of course, of Hlongwane? And now, the likes of Sipho Bulle, as well as Maswanganyi, have come into the conversation. The debates are there for all of us to see with regards to that. But Hugo Broos has shown a love for Themba Bulle at the early stages of the season after the move to Orlando Pirates. He included him in the AFCON squad. And, since the start of this year, we haven't seen much of Themba Bulle in his struggle for places against the likes of teammates Tito Maswanganyi, as well as Urile Mufugeng playing in the number 10 position. What's up, Chief? Did I say Sipho? What did I say? My apologies. Sipho Bulle. Thanks. That's why we've got a dope team here with Aaron as well as Mdu backing things up here. So it's Bulle now against Maswanganyi, as well as Mufugeng for that number 10 position. And let's start off by looking at the man that has been selected. This would be Mufugeng, Urile. Everybody's favorite. And as far as South Africa is concerned, things have gotten better for Rile in appearances, including a return in goals and assists. When you look at his numbers in the Betway Premiership, 18 appearances, 4 goals, 5 assists, all of that in the way of goals and assists coming from round about November. So he started to get good and he's continued in that regard going through to March. In the Champions League, just the one appearance for him, which would have been a slight disappointment, not just for him, for all of the Orlando Pirates, but the one assist as well. He's also scored in the Carling knockout. So 27 appearances and a goal every 422 minutes. I need you to consider that when you think about Mufugeng and the competition for places in the number 10 position with the likes of Patrick Maswanganyi. Let's move on to Patrick. Have a look at these numbers, and many of you that love Patrick Maswanganyi, I'm a big fan. We'll look at the numbers and feel, well, it's just a case of preference, really, as to who gets selected behind Zwane or alongside Zwane in the battle for the number 10 position. That, when you look at Maswanganyi, 17 appearances, 6 goals scored. He's played 1 less game than Urile. He scored 2 more goals than Urile. He's also only had just the 1 assist, though. Rile's at 5. That's in the Betway Premiership. When you consider Maswanganyi, MTN 8, 1 goal scored in 3 appearances. Nedbank Cup, 2 appearances, 1 goal, and 1 assist. All in all, 25 appearances, 8 goals, and 3 assists. Compare that to Rile's 27 appearances, 5 goals, and 6 assists. And it just comes down to which player Hugo Broos prefers here. It's very difficult to separate. You could argue, Maswanganyi has better numbers, and here's that other stat I told you about to keep an eye on. Rile scores a goal every 335 minutes. Patrick Maswanganyi in the league scores a goal every 149 minutes. So he scores more often than Rile. And I could also point this out for you. In that regard, he's better than Evidence Makgopa as well. A goal every 149 minutes is quite impressive for a man playing in the number 10 position. Now, take those two, compare them to Sipho Bulle. Let's move on to Bulle, and you'll see there's a huge difference in the numbers that we get out of Sipho Bulle when you compare him to Patrick Maswanganyi, when you compare him to Urile Mufugeng. And this may be the reason why we're not seeing Maswanganyi maybe featuring in the national team here, when you consider that even at Orlando Pirates, he's battling with Mufugeng, battling with Maswanganyi, and in the year 2026, he's losing to those two in the way of starting first. Injury may have played its role as well, but for Maswanganyi, just 9 appearances in the league compared to or rather for Sipho Bulle, 9 appearances in the league compared to Maswanganyi 17, big difference. Compared to Ribule Mufugeng's 18, big difference. So they've played maybe twice the amount of games that Bulle has, have the other two that are competing with him at Pirates and in the national team for the same position. He's only played 2 in the Champions League. That's neither here nor there when you consider none of them have really played too much game time in the Champions League. 4 in the MTN 8, 4 appearances in the Carling knockout, and 1 in the Nedbank Cup. I mentioned the Nedbank Cup because that's the only goal you'll find Sipho Bulle has scored this season out at Orlando Pirates in the Nedbank Cup, in the 1 appearance there, and no assists. No other goals in the league. So consider Maswanganyi, 8 goals and 3 assists in all competitions. Consider that, compare that to Mufokeng with 5 goals and 6 assists in all competitions to just 20 appearances and 1 goal, no assists from Bulle. And even in that regard, Bulle is losing out. To play in the number 10 position, I think you'd need more in the way of productivity in creating goals. Creating moments in and around the final third that lead to goals or maybe goal-scoring opportunities. So let's move on. Since we've answered the number 10 position, the big talking point is the goalkeeping position. And for one, Hugo Broos admitted that he would have preferred to have Brandon Peterson, the Kaizer Chiefs goalkeeper, in the squad. But unfortunately for Peterson, he's out injured, and his numbers have so been impressive. His season has been amongst the best from a South African point of view, and many out at Kaizer Chiefs felt a while ago, maybe even before the AFCON, that he should have been in the conversation for a starting berth in the AFCON, and well, they maybe would have bemoaned the fact that Peterson didn't make that squad, especially if Chaine was going to be dropped in the lead up to the World Cup. But Hugo Broos has made it clear. He's made a statement here that I think will answer a lot of questions as to why some players are in the squad and others aren't in the squad. And here he is, and he said to the media most recently, it's very clear it's the quality. If you don't have the quality, you can't be Bafana Bafana. And the performance are showing your quality every week in the PSL or club you're playing for. Secondly, even more important is the quality is the mentality. So is that what differentiates Maswangani from Mufokeng in the battle for the number 10 position? Mentality? And maybe the attitude you bring or energy you bring into the change room. Is that why Chaine has been left out of the squad? Is it about the mentality and the energy you bring into the change room? It could answer a lot of questions as to why a few players aren't making the Bafana lineup. But in talking about just goalkeepers, let's have a look at Sipho Chaine's record-breaking season at Orlando Pirates, and his numbers are impressive. 29 appearances in the league, just 9, think about it, just 9 goals scored in 21 appearances, 14 clean sheets. Sipho Chaine has been on fire in the current campaign, there's no doubt about it. But when you take him and you consider Ronaldo, Lena, maybe one could argue shouldn't be in the conversation, just looking at the numbers here. But then again, you have to consider what Hugo Broos says about mentality and maybe the energy you bring into the change room. For Ronaldo, Lena out at Sekhukhune, just 12 appearances this season, so he's not playing every game that's available out at Sekhukhune. There's a good competition for places out there from a goalkeeping point of view, but in his 12 appearances, he has kept 8 clean sheets, which is impressive. That means he's only conceded in 4 of the 12 games he's played, and in those 4 games, he's conceded 5 goals. Those are impressive numbers from a goalkeeping point of view. He's just not playing as often as Sipho Chaine, and nor does he have the defense that stands in front of Chaine, helping him keep clean sheets and keep the numbers that Chaine has been able to keep. So let's keep things moving. From the goalkeeping department, my biggest sore from a Hugo Broos point of view, and keep in mind with me, Hugo Broos can do very little wrong. He knows more than me, he knows better than me, and pretty much whether it's his squad for the AFCON or the World Cup, I'll judge him only after the fact, only in hindsight, only once the results have come in. But going into the games, I back him every step of the way, but I do question him in this one scenario. And that's that of Rayners not making the squad. Yes, we know Lyle Foster is his preferred number 9, no question there. Evidence Makgopa will be the man that will be coming in off the bench most likely for Foster. And let's look at Evidence's season then at Orlando Pirates. And for Evidence, 18 appearances at Pirates, 5 goals scored. He's got 3 assists, scores a goal every 162 minutes. Now, this is interesting, because he has a striker scoring a goal every 162 minutes. Again, when you consider Maswangani and the fact that he scores a goal every 149 minutes. out at Orlando Pirates means Masangani is getting a better return, isn't he? But that's evidence Mahopa. 5 goals in 18 appearances, 3 assists, quite importantly, in the Betway Premiership, and 1 goal in the Carling knockout. So again, Masangani is outscoring him, although Mahopa is the out-and-out striker. But with Mahopa, it's so much more than just the goals. It's about the work rate and how he helps you defend right from the front, and also how he can help you defend set pieces when he does drop back for corners and such. But when you compare Lyle Foster's numbers in just the number 9s, out-and-out number 9s, to Ikram Rayners, you might shed a tear. And I've got a message for Ikram Rayners. It's a pretty straightforward message too. Well, Ikram Rayners, should he ever get a call-up again ahead of the World Cup, if I'm him, I'm giving the security guard at the gate the high five. I'm giving the driver the high five and a hug. I'm seeing Hugo Broos. I'm giving him a hug. I'm hugging everybody. I'm nice to everybody. I'm singing louder than everybody in the change room. I'm carrying people's bags. I'm bringing that positive energy. Because the only thing that could possibly be missing from Ikram Rayners not making the squad is maybe the mentality that Hugo Broos is talking about. Because in goals, in the Champions League, 4 appearances, 1 goal. In the league, 17 appearances, 10 goals. So he's in double figures. The only of the Bafana players we've looked at that's in double figures in the league. 10 goals, 3 assists. Then again, a goal every 101 minutes. A game is 90 minutes long. So this guy takes maybe a game and then some and scores a goal. A game and then some. That's a goal every other game. At these stats and at this rate. In the MTN8, 3 appearances, 3 goals. There he's got a goal every 85 minutes. That's a goal every game. Those are wicked numbers. Ikram, I don't know what you could be doing wrong. Maybe you're a quiet guy and reserved. Just give them hugs and high fives and do whatever it takes. Sing louder than everybody else and dance maybe as you're going out to the field and do whatever it takes. We need these numbers. We need your ability. You've also scored at the Club World Cup. I'm a big fan of Ikram Rayners. I haven't always been a big fan of Ikram Rayners. I've had my doubts before he joined Mamelodi Sundowns. It's when he joined Mamelodi Sundowns where I took my head off to him and thought, look, man, if you can sit Shalili on the bench, if now that he's fit again, you're giving the impressive Leon a good run for his money. Good run for his money. This guy is money in the bank. So for Ikram Rayners, do whatever it takes. For Masangani, I do believe the door is not completely shut for the likes of Masangani, Ikram Rayners, maybe even Chaine. Should things change here, should maybe Lena not grab his opportunity, we could still see 1 or 2 players making their way back into the squad, the likes of Ngwata, or although we do know there are 1 or 2 that Hugo Broos has made it pretty clear they won't be seeing the light of day as far as Bafana Bafana is concerned. But he's had his big talking points, and with every squad he does select from now on, there'll be huge talking points. He's got a good opponent in Panama, I do believe, in preparations for the World Cup. A couple of good games it should be against Panama. It'll be interesting to see who he starts first or second game, and also how the players that aren't maybe so popular perform. At an important time, not only for Hugo Broos, but for Bafana Bafana, and those that will look to, of course, book their places in the World Cup. It's important now that their attitude is right, that they bring the right energy into the squad, into the change room. It's also important that they get game time. You see how Bulle is suffering for game time in his club, and it's through no doing of his own, whether it be injuries or the fact that Wadu of late prefers Omasangani as well as Zile. All of those things contribute, and Hugo Broos is making the best of what he can in selecting his preferred 23 for now and 26 for the World Cup if it is indeed to be 26. But what's interesting is, in as far as Bafana Bafana is concerned, between now and the World Cup, including the 2 games against Panama, the football won't stop. The only thing that will stop is the matches, and in and out of those matches and in between those matches, moving on to the next and moving on to the tournament, we'll all have our opinions on what he's done right and done wrong, and all of that will depend on the results on the day, whether it be in the 2 games against Panama or at the World Cup. At the end of the day, all that matters is the results, and we're hoping he puts his best foot forward. Whilst those debates do continue, we'll agree with him in some places and disagree with him in others, but we're hoping he puts his best foot forward and that South Africa do come up with a surprise or 2 at the end of it all, in concluding what's, I think, in my opinion, been a lovely career with SAFA and the South African footballing community for Hugo Broos as he rounds up what's been a great contribution to South African football on the international stage and helped us get to rubbing shoulders with the best of the continent in qualifying for the last 2 AFCONs and getting out of the group stages, finishing 3rd in the 1 AFCON. Now we're rubbing shoulders with the best the world has to offer, and we'll be hoping, once again, he's got a surprise for us, and that surprise, which we'd all love, is to see South Africa firstly beat Mexico in the opening match, just to conclude the beef we've got over with them over 2010 in that game that ended with a 1-1 scoreline. But more importantly, we want to see South Africa get out of the group stages. That would be a nice surprise and a lovely farewell from Hugo Broos to the South African people, to a point where I think, whether we agree to them or not, he will be remembered fondly, but still a long way to go until that point. So that's our look at Hugo Broos, the major talking points, the players he's left out, and of course, quite importantly, the players that are playing the football overseas. How are they doing? And why are they in the squad? I think with the numbers, we can justify why they're there. It's all down now to the performances once they do put on the golden green of South Africa. Again, thank you for taking the time to join myself, Du and Aaron, on the Sizwe Mabena show. Keep in mind, this is Omni Audio Africa. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. And until next week, we'll be back. And till then, let's just sign out to saying click, click, bang.